My name is Percy Jackson.
All right, hello everybody, and welcome to our season 2, episode 6 podcast. Nobody gets the fleece. Although I don't know if we could call it nobody getting the fleece after how this episode ends.
Somebody gets the fleece.
I just wanted to thank everybody because our numbers are going off on like literally every platform we post on right now. And I know it's momentum from the show, but I also just want to say like thanks to everybody who is contributing to that watch time, because this is like very, very fun for us, and we're happy to watch the groundwork we laid out, like even before knowing that it would do this, kind of carry itself through. And so
Yeah.
just shout out to all of you guys. Remember, if you're on whatever platform you're watching this on, honestly, interact, ask us questions. We love that. We love being able to like actually have some community feedback. And don't forget to follow, subscribe, whatever the term is for where you're watching. First thing that happens in this episode is we get a very brief Tyson scene. And the reason that I love this is because, of course, the people who are watching the show who've never read the books didn't know Tyson was still alive. And it's so brief but subtle enough to show us exactly what happened. It happens the same in the books, which is Tyson, he says this, we don't actually, get his point of view, but he says that when the ship exploded, he went underwater and Rainbow found him because Rainbow was waiting to play again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I will say, our friend Ashley, she told me that she's been watching it with people who have never read the books before, and that she was like having fun, like messing with them because they were all dying to know if Tyson was still alive, and she was like, I made them think that he was dead because that's part of the whole journey with loving Tyson, is you have to like, actually think that he's gone forever. That's why you're so relieved when he's not. And I was like, I love that so much. But the scene itself I thought was sweet because it very closely mirrors the scene that Percy did when he was grabbed by the water when he jumped out of the St. Louis Arch, because he doesn't know that he can breathe underwater either. The little naiad thing has to literally tell him, you can breathe down here during that scene. And has to like convince him to try, and then he realizes that he can do it. And so it was really, really sweet to see Tyson like that. And then like letting it out like, oh, I'm standing on the bottom of the ocean and I'm fine. This is fun.
So one thing I'm not sure how to feel about, but it is a cute detail, is that Monster Donut Bracelet of Calagia makes another appearance, and it now seems to be a way for Tyson to communicate with Rainbow, which we saw a little bit before, and it becomes this reoccurring thing where somehow when he touches it, Rainbow notices and is like, oh, are we playing again? But then we cut to Percy having a nightmare, and it's kind of funny. I described this nightmare as Twilight New Moon wedding nightmare, but Percy version, where he sees the scene of a bunch of dead campers in the main house, which is creepy on its own. But then he sees the figure, and it's kind of funny. I did a video on this a while ago of like, do we think this is Kronos or do we think it's Luke? It wasn't either of, well, I mean, it probably technically was still Kronos, but Percy, when he wakes up from this dream and Annabeth's like, what's going on? He reveals that the figure that's hooded that walks in the door is actually Thalia.
Yeah, this dream was very interesting because in the books, the dream that he has it before the siren scene. But in the books, the dream that he has with Thalia is when he doesn't know that it's Thalia, and they're standing next to the sarcophagus, and she looks inside of it and gets really scared about what it is, and then he gets woken up by Annabeth, and so he doesn't learn at that point that the sarcophagus is that Luke was in it. And he doesn't realize at first that that's even Thalia. In this version, it's like almost reminding him in a horrible way of the stakes of everything. I remember when we saw that we went back and forth a lot about if we thought that was a dream or if that could be like part dream, part real. Like if I
Yeah.
thought that it was like the kids after the big battle in the last episode, like sleeping in like the infirmary room in the big house because they're all injured. I didn't think they were all dead. I did not think that that Disney was gonna let Percy have a dream where he's standing in a room full of dead, and you actually see the faces of a couple of the dead children. I was just like,
Yeah.
okay. It was very interesting. The Thalia part was very interesting because there's so much, like, they don't even know what it means.
Mm-hmm.
They're both like confused about what it means. I really liked how just like freaked out they showed Percy was by this dream where it's the middle of the night and he just, it feels like they need to go do something now because it's like
Yeah.
he just had a dream of everyone at camp being dead. So let's go. What, I don't want to wait until the next morning. And Annabeth is like trying to talk him down and calm
Mm-hmm.
him down, which is when he tells her that he didn't see Kronos, that he saw Thalia. And Annabeth kind of figures it out when he
Mm-hmm.
says she. But, you know, they leave it where it's interesting because Annabeth is trying to say, like, oh, it's just a dream. It doesn't have to mean anything. And at the same time, Percy starts saying, like, oh, my mom said that dreams never lie, even if you don't know what they mean. And
Mm-hmm.
so when we look at like the books, you could say that that's almost Thalia. That's like, it feels like it's Kronos trying to taunt Percy to be
Mm-hmm.
like, Thalia's gonna join me, you little loser, and she's not gonna join you. And then it
Yeah.
also feels like it's this weird mix of Thalia, like Thalia being afraid, like Thalia's fears that she will, like,
Mm-hmm.
double cross them or something, because that is a big, that's the whole, like you said, you brought this up with me, that's the whole reason why she joins the Hunters, which it is. Like, she doesn't want to
Mm-hmm.
go through that back and forth and be tempted to think that if she just takes control that everything will be fine. And so she just
Mm-hmm.
takes herself out of it so she doesn't have to go feel like that anxiety all the time. And so it
Yeah.
feels like a mix of them, but I think what they're doing with Thalia is so interesting because
Yeah.
in the books they talk very much about how I don't think Thalia would ever join Luke pretty early on. But in this, they're like teasing it out and kind of emotionally torturing them a little bit with it because they
Mm-hmm.
both like don't want to believe that she would be on Luke's side, but they also like don't know what to think when Luke has told them that she is. Um,
Yeah.
and it's just like, I don't think that he would be having a dream like this if he wasn't told that and didn't think that that could be possible.
Yeah.
It's very interesting to see like how that has affected them.
Yeah, and I like how, you know, in the books it's a little more clear that Thalia would never have chosen it. Like, just as you said, they talk about it earlier, but also the circumstances in which she gets awakened are a little bit different than it seems like it's going to play out. And so there never is a doubt in our minds as the readers that, you know, like she'll eventually come to the right conclusion. In this one, they are making it more up in the air and making it more of a danger that Kronos could have a second option. Which, I mean, it was something stated in the books, but it never feels like the stakes are high on that one.
Yeah, and I think it's because we in the books we get to know Thalia purely through how Annabeth describes her. You like Luke says that line in the beginning of the book, but the majority of the time when you hear about her, even in the first book, it's
Mm-hmm.
through Annabeth and Grover who care a lot about her and think highly of her. And that's kind
Yeah.
of like the surprise in Titan's Curse is when you actually get to know her to see that her and Percy don't get along. When you,
Mm-hmm.
at that point, believe that they might, or at least it's more surprising how much they don't get along, I guess, the first time you read that book.
Yeah.
I feel like because of things that happen in this episode, I feel like
Mm-hmm.
they might be doing this thing where I feel like they're trying to make it as believable as possible for Annabeth to be tempted to join Luke or at least hear him out in the next
Yes.
episode. And so they're making things happen to make that story happen without it seeming like they're assassinating Annabeth's character or anything like that. And so she spends a whole season thinking that Thalia also would have like agreed in some way with Luke or would have been tempted to join him or whatever, then like that curiosity that she feels about what Luke knows about Thalia and things like that would make her consider talking to him when she normally in like the books and stuff wouldn't, because that never happens in the books, obviously. And so they
Mm-hmm.
had to make a storyline to make that believable without messing with anybody's character in the long
Yeah.
term. And I feel like, and that I think makes it worth it to see, because I do want at this point Annabeth to be able to just talk to him and be like, stop being a cryptic little weirdo and just tell me what happened when you were older and can remember things better than me when I was 7.
One thing, like, I mean, I almost hate that we got some spoilers of season 3 from people filming, because we do know Thalia eventually does end up, at least somewhat being on the right side, because she is on the quest in Titan's Curse. We know Tamara was there during filming of it, so it's not like they're going to change it so fundamentally that, like, the events of Titan's Curse are completely different. But it definitely does put more weight on her choice to become a hunter. In the way that you realize she notices, I could very easily be tempted. I don't like this. I'm out. I won't turn 16 so that I can't be the prophecy child.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So one other detail about this whole thing that I want to point out is both in the nightmare sequence and when Percy wakes up, ZEUS is kind of raging in the background. There's a little thunderstorm happening.
I noticed that the second time. I was like, shut up. Like, why are you mad? You're mad about everything. But what, like, specifically, why are you mad right now? And I still,
Well,
every episode, I always think about how we know that ZEUS shows up this season.
yeah,
And I'm always so interested to see if it's in the past, if he actually shows up in the present and is like, look, you children, you all suck. Or like when it is, but it's just him being his dramatic self just makes me think like, what do you think is happening right now?
exactly. Like we know Courtney Vance's he was announced some part when they were filming this. I forget how deep into filming they were, but it was while they were filming season 2. We know he shows up. Um I'm starting to believe more and more because we keep talking about that song, What Really Happened.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's where they show the actual like battle that Thalia had, her last stand, and whatever ZEUS may have said to her in that moment. Because I wonder if like how that all went down is what shapes how she's okay with being on their side afterwards, even though she did have her own beef with ZEUS.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like that song has to be. That's the last song. Yeah, that's the last song in the soundtrack. If you don't know what we mean, but I just look every time I look at that, I'm like, it has to be from Thalia's perspective,
Yes.
because she's the one, and so much of this season is all these people talking about her, wondering who she is, and I'm like, look, I just want to know what she thinks. I don't care
Mhm.
about what all these other people think. I don't care what she thinks. What does she think happened?
Yeah.
They never fully tell us that in the books either, and so I'm like, I want her to tell me what she thinks about what happened in her own life. Like, she's the most important person that you could ask that question to. Nobody else's opinion really matters all that much outside of what she experienced herself. And so I hope I just always hope that's what that is, because it's like, what's the point
Yeah.
of showing us and talking about all of this if you're not going to give her the chance to like end the season once and for all, when she's like the mystery really of this season so far.
Hmm. So going back to Annabeth and Percy's talk when he wakes up and he's talking about the dream, and she reminds him, we have a plan. Our plan is based on the Odyssey. It's based on what we know from Polyphemus from mythology. We have to do it this way. And Percy's ready to go. And this made me think of a conversation that me and William literally had walking home from school yesterday. So I sometimes I'll go my husband will drop me off at Williams school and I'll walk him home. And we have the best conversations when that's happening. He decided, because he wants us to play a D&D Percy Jackson game at some point, which we will do on this pod. You guys can leave us suggestions in the comments for that. But he was like, we should come up with character sheets of the main characters. What do we think everybody's alignments would be? And so we spent the whole time talking about, well, is Percy more of a neutral good or a chaotic good? Which, of course, chaotic good fits. It means that as a hero, you're going to do whatever you feel like you need to do to complete what feels right to you. Whereas neutral good, it's kind of more like Sam Gamgee. He's not going to like break too many rules to get somebody help, but he's going to help however he can. And lawful good would be an example of what Annabeth is doing here, where she's like, I know the rules of this society. I know the rules that the gods want us to follow. We're going to follow that plan.
That very much works. Annabeth is so interesting during this part that she came. I love the fact that she literally says, because of what we know from the Odyssey, like that they're not, they're like, this is like one thing that doesn't like pretend that they don't know that these stories are already out there. It's just fun to hear her come up with this whole plan and basically like talk Percy back down. Like, we're not going to go bursting in there right now. We can wait a couple more hours and then we'll enact our perfect plan.
Yes. Okay, so this brings us to Polyphemus's monologue, which I know you wanted to talk a little bit more about.
I'm laughing because the line where he says, if you don't trust nobody, then you live, and he's talking about how he, just because he lives by himself doesn't mean that he's not lonely, and he's just learned, like through experience, that if he just doesn't trust anyone ever and just keeps everyone away from him, then he can stay alive. But if he lets anybody in, he thinks he's just gonna die. I was like, that sounds like me before I went to therapy.
For someone who likes to be alone, you can't seem to shut up!
I liked about that is it shows how much Odysseus affected him. That instead of it just being like, oh, a Cyclops is just a monster, he's stupid and he doesn't know what he's doing and he's just gonna go cry to his Poseidon daddy and like that's it. Instead, this is more that the way that he's like collecting people and like hurting all these like demigods and satyrs and whoever else ended up on his island. It just shows like Odysseus did this thing on this one day, on this one time, like thousands of years ago, because he thought that it was the easiest way to just get what he needed and leave, and he didn't consider a Cyclops like its own like personhood, you know, like its own being or whatever. When we were reading Sea of Monsters, I talked a lot about how Tyson's depiction reminded me a lot of autistic people, and it still does. Even in the books, like he has like fidget toys that Beckendorf gives him, his little like metal kit he uses to make things. I'm like, that's basically a fidget toy. And this part reminds me a lot of that, of like one of the things that sucks about being autistic the most is that you can tell when people think that they're smarter than you, and the way that you can tell when people are making fun of you, even if you don't know why, and you don't necessarily understand fully like what it is that you did. Like the whole autistic thing of saying something when you're being serious and everyone starts laughing because they think you're kidding, and then when they realize that you're not kidding, then they start making that whole dynamic. That's what that reminded me of, Polyphemus's whole thing of, he's just learned like, yeah, people always think that I'm stupid, they always try to take advantage of me. So the like extremely like kind of, I don't know, like black and white way of him looking at it now is just like, I'm just going to kill anybody that comes near me, because at some point they're going to try to take advantage of me, and I don't want to deal with that.
He says, you mortals can't see even with all of your eyes. I kind of love the way that that was phrased, of like, you guys have more eyeballs than me, but you guys are so freaking blind.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have to bring up watching The Walking Dead again, because I can't tell you how many stupid societies, like the main problem with them is that anytime they come across other survivors, they want to kill them. Like, it happens more than once in the later seasons where they'll find a new group of people, and this group of people has been very hurt by other survivors of the zombie apocalypse. And so they're just like, nope, we shoot other people on sight, just like the zombies. And it goes to show that, like, you know, things can be tricky enough where you really don't know who to trust, but at the same time, the only way to build community, the only way to get out of tricky situations sometimes is to trust other people.
Yeah, that was going to be the thing I was going to say was what The Walking Dead I thought was really interesting for the first like 5 seasons or something. I stopped watching it somewhere in the 5th season somewhere, but it was interesting because the general story in that I always found way more intriguing is that nobody cares about the zombies. Like, they never even tell you why it even happened, because it's not actually about the zombies. It's about like what the humans are doing to each other because they live in this world. The zombies are just kind of like the thing that forces things to happen, but it's more about like people and the choices that they're making than anything else. And that's what this whole thing kind of with Polyphemus reminded me of. It reminds me of me and a lot of other people that I've known in my life, that it's very easy to keep convincing yourself or keep believing that the world is a horrible place and everyone is horrible and everyone wants to hurt me and the world is attacking me and all those sort of things that we all believe, if you never actually give somebody a chance to prove you otherwise, or the moment that somebody says something that you think might be them turning against you, you believe it to like 100% and cut them out of your life completely, that you're never going to find out one way or another. You're just going to keep thinking that's true. And like in this whole situation, he could have easily gotten out of it still alive. And still, well, it's vague, but still a lot more fine than he actually was. He could have left with 2 powerful Poseidon kids as his like allies of sorts. But he just couldn't let himself try to trust them at all. And so it went instead a completely different way. It didn't have to be like that if he would have like allowed that, but he just won't do it. It's just interesting to watch as from like a trauma perspective of somebody who is just convinced that the world is a scary place, and every time people show up, he's the scary one. And it's like you're blaming all these people for these things when you're the one hurting them. Like, you don't even know. Like, we know for sure that Percy wouldn't have hurt you.
Yeah.
He doesn't in the books. He doesn't want to in the books. That's like the whole complication in the book chapters, is that he doesn't want to hurt Polyphemus, and Polyphemus keeps messing with him because he looks like Tyson and he doesn't want to hurt him. And so it's like he's so sure that people are like this when they're, I mean, it's like he has Grover with him. Like, Grover is the most empathetic creature ever and would never hurt anybody. He would become his best friend if Polyphemus would let him. And so it's like he didn't even talk to Grover enough to realize how kind of a being he is. So it's like he really doesn't give anyone a chance if he didn't even figure that out about Grover.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit more about Polyphemus being intelligent in this one, because I feel like him adding voices to the collection is an extension of that. I mean, we know Cyclopes have this power in the Percy Jackson universe that they can mimic voices, but not only does Polyphemus mimic the voices, he makes sure to remember key pieces of information about each person. And when it comes to the oral tradition of Greek mythology, that's why people were able to memorize, like the verses in Homer and recite them. Like, we think of people back then being, they were illiterate, so they must not have been as smart as us. But when you don't have all of that brain space being taken up by how to be literate, you could actually memorize things. Hey Arnold did a play on this, actually, if I remember. Mr. Kokoschka, in the episode where he can't read, there's this whole part where he tricks Arnold into thinking he learned how to read by memorizing the first few pages of A Tale of Two Cities. And
Mm-hmm.
So Arnold totally believes him. He's able to memorize that because he doesn't have anything else taking up that brain space.
Mm-hmm. Even my little 2.5-year-old niece, she's memorized the books that she likes to hear before bed. She'll just recite them along with my sister, and she says everything she's saying is right. She's just memorized what's in those books because she's heard them so many times. I saw a TikTok video the other day that showed why this was a good decision to make him more intelligent this time, to have him acting stupid and not realizing that Grover was not a Cyclops and stuff, to be like an act that he's playing instead of like the actual him. It was somebody who's only watched the show that's never read the books, and they were saying they put like text on the screen saying like I was waiting for Polyphemus to like reveal himself to be more smart because Tyson is. And I was like, yeah, that's exactly why it's such a good idea to do that, because if you have to, the idea that like Tyson is like the one special Cyclops, that's not true. Tyson is just the only Cyclops that people actually like take the time to talk to because Percy makes them. But other Cyclops are probably just as intelligent as he is, and it would be nice to people if they actually treated them well instead of just trying to kill them all the time. And so it's like you can't have somebody like Tyson who uses these things and is able to come up with plans and strategize and all these different things in the show, and then suddenly meet another one and have the other one be just like an idiot. That doesn't, especially in a show that's about disabled kids, that would come across not so great. As like that whole idea of like he's the good disabled one or whatever. So I'm glad that they didn't do that this time and changed it instead.
So, okay, one detail that Polyphemus says here, I think, is them planting seeds for Battle of the Labyrinth, which we don't have a renewal for yet, no matter what anybody says. I feel like I've seen whisperings of season 4 already. But,
oh yeah, I can say that. So that's like something that resembles news besides everything else that's happening. There was this really weird Disney event that happened. It was weird because it said it was like a Disney, panel thing, but it was on a Discord channel, and I was like, I'm not really sure that it was really official, but they were basically showing just like a bunch of clips from different Disney property things that were more like kids related. Our friend Sophia went to it, and they played like a clip of like bloopers of them from interviews and stuff that they did for the press tour or whatever. And then at that thing they said that season 4 is in early stages of development, but they specifically said that it's not greenlit or whatever. And then Chris Gallardo, who is a journalist, he posted saying that, don't get overly like excited about this stuff yet. He basically said Rick and Becky plan ahead, meaning that they likely wrote like the outline and probably a couple script ideas and stuff for season 4 before they went for like Christmas and stuff for the break before they came back this week. And he said like just it'll take a little bit longer, just be patient. And so basically that, and I was saying like saying something's greenlit is like an official term that means that everybody has like signed contracts and they have like a general plan, like a idea of a plan of when things will be in production and things like that. And they're not at that point yet, but I know that I hope that they can figure that out before they finish Titan's Curse, because it just makes everybody's life easier, like production wise on set, knowing that they'll be back because then they don't have to find like another job really in between. They can just go home and relax for a couple months and then start doing work when it's their time to get ready. It's like a weird limbo if they don't renew them and production ends, so they have to go back home and find something else to like make money in the meantime. So I just wanted to say that people have talked about season 4. It's not like official or anything yet, but like the ratings for the first 2 episodes came out, and they were pretty much the same as season 1, so I have no idea why they wouldn't, considering that when they had way more competition this month with like Stranger Things and Heated Rivalry and stuff, when 2 years ago in December there wasn't anything else going on but Us, and they had to start earlier than they wanted to because of Stranger Things taking all the time around Christmas and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, just to say that, like, it's not official or anything like that yet, but I would be really surprised if it isn't in the next couple months or so, considering all of that. But just like wait,
Yeah.
they'll announce it again, like they did for Titans Cursed.
Yeah, which I'm sure they'll like continue setting us up with like little Easter eggs of maybe if this happens, this will come back. But the one, and I don't have too much more to say to it other than I was kind of like, what are they going to do with that? Is that Polyphemus, when Grover says something about like, how did you manage to get the fleece that smells like Pan? And he's like, who do you think delivered the fleece to me? So this idea that Pan may have given it to Polyphemus is so weird. And I don't know what to think of it quite yet. I'm hoping they bring it back so that we get an explanation from Pan when we finally meet him. So one thing I want to point out here, just for, us once again refuting that we think loyalty is a fatal flaw, is that Polyphemus generalizes all demigods in this next part. And he talks about how satyrs aren't really a threat to him, but demigods are, because demigods will go through crazy feats to save their friends. And he says it, in such a generalization that I want to be like smacking people on the head like, this isn't just a Percy problem. It's not just a Percy problem.
No, but it's also like a thing of, he sees that as a bad thing because he wants to be able to like hurt people basically and have nobody come and find him and just be like left alone. And so to him, it's bad that demigods do that because it means that more people are going to come bother him. And that's why he thinks it's a bad thing. But generally, it's a good idea if you care about your like, your friends and stuff.
Yeah.
I just can never believe that that's a bad thing. That's like a little bit of us foreshadowing our own selves of what we'll be talking about later.
Yeah, and I mean, so it's how he came up with the bait idea in the first place, probably having not really heard of Percy before Grover got there. Okay, so here's the area where we both got pissed off, which is Luke's iris message.
Listen.
And we could see this as, does he care for Annabeth? Is he really checking in on her? But I more believe what he says to Allison, which is that it's just recon, right? It's recon with a side of manipulation, though, because he knows he's been in her head already. But I do love that we see that Annabeth is starting to grasp a little bit of the nuance of the situation in this conversation. Because she tells him, like, you may have been right about Thalia saying that she hated Zeus. I'm starting to remember that now, but I don't think she'd want war. This isn't how she would do it. And that's exactly the type of nuance we need in this fandom.
Yeah. I will say one of the things I thought was interesting, because we've talked so far this season about, and when we were reading the books, about how Annabeth basically has a trauma bond with Luke, like a real one, where he's able to manipulate her so much easier than literally anyone. Like, Annabeth would never, get in these situations with anyone else, but he knows that he has that, like, influence over her, basically. I thought that was interesting because right before he shows up, she's the one being very, like, authoritative with Percy, like she usually is. Like, we have to stick with the plan. We have to go and get, like, the sheepskins really quickly, because if we don't get it in enough time, we're not going to be able to have enough time to get there before he gets there so we can get in. And that's the whole plan. They have to be there when he's letting his sheep out so that he doesn't realize that they're there and can rescue everybody before they get caught. And then Luke's stupid face, suddenly Iris messages in, and she gets all caught up in a conversation that Percy has to go back and, like, stop the conversation at a certain point, because he's like, we're gonna be late. We're gonna miss, like, our time. Like, we need to go. And it just shows, like, she's so, like, we need to follow the plan exactly. And then Luke shows up and she just gets all wrapped up in that conversation that is so out of character for Annabeth to usually do. Not say she is out of character, but that's just not like her but
Yeah.
she's like wants to talk to him so bad that she ends up doing that. And this conversation is, I called it like grooming 101, and just like a reminder that grooming is not always romantic grooming, but I'm like, Luke is being pretty creepy with Annabeth in this episode, so I can honestly see why people might think that he's still being weird about her at this point, because one thing I thought of was like, did he try to do this when she was at home with her dad? Did he just like show up to talk to her when she very obviously doesn't want to speak to him? Like, because I was just like, what is he doing? And like, I do think that you're right that I think it's recon in like two different ways, like trying to see where the Golden Fleece is, and then also trying to get Annabeth to join him at the same time. Because the thing I thought was interesting is that he starts this conversation off being like sounding so nice, which is why I was like, this is grooming, that he shows up. He knows that she doesn't want to talk to him. And the first thing he starts saying is like, oh my God, you're alive. I'm so glad that you're okay. And he's like saying things about Polyphemus, like, oh, I heard that this one Cyclops isn't stupid like all the other ones. And I was just like, you're ableist, go away, or whatever word that would be in this world for how he talks about Cyclops anyway. But he's like talking to her as if like, you know, they're on really good terms. It was like, when was the last time that they spoke? The last time they spoke, they ended the conversation with him trying to justify killing everyone at camp who doesn't agree with him, and him telling her that she doesn't know Thalia and he knows her better. And then Tyson set a bomb. That's the last time that they talked. And in all these episodes since then, she has been like on an emotional like tailspin after the conversation that he put her through. And he shows up and is like, hey, remember me? I'm the nice guy with a popped collar, like being like stereotypical jock guy from college, and is like talking to you as if we're on good terms and like we're friends when we're absolutely not. And right away I was just like, what is going on where you're talking to her like you still, everything's good? Like, do you remember the last time you spoke? She's been feeling like she has no self-worth or identity for the last 2 episodes because of you. And you're talking to her as if everything's great. Like, that's like the confusion when you have like a trauma bond thing with somebody, is that you feel like you need to just go with what they say because you don't want things to be weird with them or like argue with them, but you're also like, I must have just made that stuff up in my head, or maybe what they said wasn't really that bad, or they didn't mean it like that, or whatever. And or like in Luke's head, does he blame Percy for Annabeth not wanting to join him? Because I feel like he might, just purely because the way that Luke was talking to them when Percy was there on the ship and stuff is very different from the way that he's talking to her right now when they're alone. And so it feels like to me like Luke thinks he blames Percy for why Annabeth doesn't want to join him or isn't willing to hear him out, I guess. And I just thought it makes sense why he does what he does later on in this episode, because I think this is like, I think he had this idea to try to like take her like this for a while, because he I think in his little mind he thinks that if he gets her alone he can convince her, which like that's a whole thing in the books that he might have.
And it's paralleling Annabeth's mindset that she can also fix him. You know, them both thinking, oh, if we just get the other one alone, we can get them to our side.
I thought that was so funny that they're both wanting to do the same thing, just the opposite directions. And it's and you can tell already that it's whatever happens in the next episode it's obviously not going to work, and whatever happens is going to be probably absolutely terrible, because it's gonna be awful. But the other like grooming-ish thing he says in here is when she says like, what, like, what, why are you here? Like, go away. You're just here just to find out if we found the Golden Fleece or not, and things like that, which like, yes, that's obviously why that's a big part of why he's suddenly talking to her. and suddenly cares about her like well-being and things like that. But
I'm just wrong about everything, huh? No matter what I say.
Sir, you are 20 years old. Like, what are you talking about? That you're giving her attitude for not wanting to speak. You want to kill her best friend. You just told her that you want to kill everybody that she's ever met. Is she supposed to be like, I will consider murder? When Percy comes in and like shuts it off, I was like, I said out loud, oh thank God. When I was like watching it at like 2:00 in the morning by myself in my apartment, I literally said thank God out loud, because I was like, somebody make like this conversation stop, because Annabeth started saying stuff like, oh, I just wish, it sounded like she was trying to say like, I just wish we could like talk some more, or like, you know, she talks about how like Thalia would never want you to, you know, enact violent revenge and like rage-filled fantasies like this. And he doesn't really have a comeback to that. He's just like, she wanted change. And it's like, yeah, doofus. But usually people don't imagine change necessarily in this way, involving killing everybody that isn't you and just starting over from zero, I guess, with demigods, where there's only like 4 of them left. I'm not really sure that's an extinction event, is what Thalia had in mind. And so it was just, I was really glad that he just like shut that off, because, like I said before, it shows how Annabeth, in the middle of their plan, where if they don't make this work, they think that Grover is going to die, or they're going to die, or all of the above. And she gets wrapped up enough in this conversation to like forget about that. And I was just glad that he showed up to like remind her, like, he always has an angle. Like, you can't actually take him that seriously, because he's never been like, you know, like who you want him to be, I guess. Yeah, and it was just, that was so, when the Iris message thing showed up, I'm like, I know this has to be Luke, because Luke would be annoying enough to Iris message her in the middle of a quest when there's no way that she would have wanted you to do this. Like, you definitely didn't get consent for this conversation, bro. She doesn't want to talk to you. You shouldn't call somebody if they don't want to speak to you. And they definitely don't want to right now. And I was like, this has to be Luke and his, like, white little skinny jeans.
And we get this brief little moment of Allison once again being really weird about Annabeth. Like, girlie, you have to be closer to Luke's age. You have to be an actual adult. And you're jealous of this little girl he calls his sister.
Yeah.
Weird.
Like, one of the only scenes we know happens after this episode is what you can imagine is Clarisse and Annabeth beating her down on the Andromeda, because they're on the Andromeda going after somebody, and she really deserves it after being so weird about Annabeth especially. But I will say that it's a valid question she's asking about, like, why are you so obsessed with this 13-year-old girl? Like, why are you spending all this time and energy to convince this literal child to join you, instead of all of these, like, you know, legal adults that are on this ship with you and would join you and, like, could, like, actually join you without breaking laws? Because she's 13. Is she gonna, like, run away from home all over again and just be a missing person while she's just on your ship all this, because she's 13? She's supposed to be going to school. Like, and because she's an actual child. And I know you talk a lot about the Odyssey being a whole thing about figuring out who you are as a leader. And it is like an interesting little tidbit that this is the scene where I was like, oh, you got that pop collar going. I see you. I see you about what the kind of leader you are, and how the way that he doesn't really shut her down. He tries. And he's basically like, I'm the leader, so what I think matters, not you, you weirdo, and just walks away. And it's just very interesting, because he very obviously has no idea how to handle, like, people questioning him. And I will say that one thing, I saw a clip from the official podcast with their acting coach, was he said that Luke doesn't have any like self-esteem or self-worth or whatever, but he all of that he gets from like basically like a cult leader. Like he was talking about Kronos. He gets all of his self-worth and identity and stuff from what he can do for him. That's true about him. Like abusive people don't have any self-worth or self-identity. And the thing that's horrible about people like that is that they then turn around and try to make you feel like that. Like think of every interaction Luke ever has with Percy. He's trying to make him feel like he has nothing except for what like his dad can give him or these other people give him, which is part of why they never understand each other, because Percy doesn't care about that stuff. And like Luke thinks that he does in the same way that he does. But that's very much what he's doing. And because of that, like he would be the worst, most insecure leader ever, because he doesn't actually know what he's doing. Like he has no idea what he's doing. He just like Kronos just knew he was the one to make this plan work, being a Hermes child. And so he's suddenly in this big position of power. He's getting all these people to join him, but he has no idea how to lead anybody, clearly, because somebody asks like a question that I think is a valid question to ask. And your response is just like refusing to tell them anything and just trying to like scare them, like intimidate them. That kind of leadership never works. It just never, like, look at the state of the world. It doesn't work. People eventually don't want to deal with you anymore, and they can only stay so afraid of you for so long. That's kind of you see that kind of stuff in The Last Olympian and stuff too, that people start like questioning Kronos and wanting to leave him, like Ethan, because Kronos is always literally like screaming at him and stuff, and nobody likes being afraid eventually you get tired of being afraid of someone like that for all the time, and you just start disobeying them because you're like, well, I'm always scared, so I might as well just like break the rules because I am always going to feel like this. So what's one more thing I could be afraid of? And so it just is interesting to see, like when we get to his ship in the next episode, to see what they figure out about like how he's running things and what that really looks like now that they're not getting like the guided tour from Luke like they did in the third episode.
Like, I guess my one takeaway from Luke throughout this episode is I don't believe him. And I don't believe him at multiple points. You know, it's kind of hard to know where, because you feel his care for Annabeth at times, that like maybe this guy does genuinely care about Annabeth. It's definitely not the right way. And you know, he lets that get sidelined a lot by his overall mission. But I don't know. This is something I was thinking about as I was reading with William, especially because in the books, Percy meets with Hermes again after the whole mission. He's like, sorry, I couldn't change Luke's mind. And Hermes goes on this talk about how the gods are not allowed to interact with their children directly. It all has to be indirect. And he asked Percy even like, how do you feel about your dad? Do you know your dad's helping you behind the scenes more than you realize? And Percy does like take a second to think like, oh, my dad gave me this ability to navigate the sea and some of these powers that actually helped me out during this mission. And so I was thinking about it. And I know we talk all the time about how the Olympians are bad parents, but part of the reasons that they are bad parents is the generational trauma of it all. And ZEUS is a tyrant himself as well. We're team both sides are kind of wrong in their own ways, but let's not kill demigods. Because in his own way, ZEUS is lording over his children and his siblings in such a way that makes them believe this. They truly believe, if I were to help my child more directly, it would be bad for me. And so we see the gods being very, very selective about who they end up helping. Hermes saying this to Percy in that moment, to me, him also indirectly saying, I help out Luke here and there in indirect ways. And I think Luke's manipulation could very easily be Hermes giving him the gift of being a trickster.
And one thing I was going to say too is the thing that Annabeth said in to Cersei in the last episode, where when she was about to bring Percy back, she was saying like, I thought that, you know, getting something from my mom like once in my life or like once a year, or hardly hearing from her was like the best that I could offer. And so I didn't realize that things could be different, that things could be better until I met him and he made me realize that it could be better. And now I want it to be better. And that's like more what it feels like, is the gods are just like, this is just how it works. And that's like the generational trauma of it all, that they're just like, this is the only way that it's ever worked. So this is the only way that it could work. And it's like, why? Like that's never true. Just because that's the only way that it works doesn't mean that it can't change and that it can work better, which is the whole thing of what the first 5 books do, is just, and continuing on through all the other books, is proving that to be true, that change can happen.
And all will go back to being as it always has been, as it should be.
It isn't how it should be. It isn't.
Like, is the gods are just like, even though they're not happy with, being afraid of Zeus all the time and him running everything and them never being able to do anything because they're afraid of Zeus and what he's going to do, they're just like, well, this is just the way that it works, and it can, and I'm just going to gaslight myself into believing this is true. And it's like, but it's not. And they prove to themselves that it's not, but it takes their kids literally like forcing them to, in order to believe it.
So the next part is the sheep sequence, where they are disguised as sheep, and this is how they're going to sneak in without Polyphemus being able to see them and smell them. And Annabeth's little line, "think woolly thoughts," here just made me crack up so much, where she's like, "think woolly thoughts," and then she starts buying.
Yeah, and like, think woolly thoughts, and Percy like, what? And them buying was really funny. There was an interview, the person's name is Kyle Meredith, that he did with Walker, that a lot of people on Twitter were posting clips of the interview, because he's actually I really like him as an interviewer, the guy Kyle, because he doesn't interrupt them. Like, he just, the reason why it was a really good interview with Walker was because he just let him talk. A lot of the interviewers would they would say part of their answer and they would interrupt them so they could ask another question. With this guy, he just let him talk about whatever and didn't cut him off until he was just done talking. And part of that interview is he was talking about how the whole Boone line was ad-lib, that James Bobin, the director of the first 2 episodes, came up to him and Leah and asked them to ad-lib something. He's like, that's a weird word. Can you ad-lib something about it? And they had just gotten back to filming, so they didn't feel confident about coming up with anything good. And so that's why Percy's hair changes in that one scene, because they ended up keeping it in, because that's one of my favorite parts of the second episode, is when he's like Boone. And so they wanted to keep it in, and so they reshot the scenes when they were doing Titan's Curse of him with shorter hair, of them in the hotel room, so they could use Boone to be like his word. because they liked the scene so much. So when I was watching this part, I was like, did you guys make this up? Is this also ad-libbing? Because that would be even funnier if they were just like, yeah, let's be sheep. And that would also make sense, because Percy's face, he was just looking at her like, what is wrong with you? What do you mean? And so I generally hope that think woolly thoughts was an ad-lib part for them, because that was very funny.
Yeah. And there's I forgot what the clip came from, but it's an interview with Leah and Dior together, where she has this whole story about how the place where she was supposed to put her hand down when she starts crawling, to start saying her lines, one of the sheeps peed in. And so she was trying to avoid it while also saying the lines and not crawling completely on her knees, because she's like, I'm trying not to get in this sheep pee right now.
I saw that clip too. I don't know what interview that is, because I've seen a couple clips of them talking about things that are interesting, but they never it never shows who is doing the interview. I need people to always say who you're getting these interviews from, because I always want to give them credit, but sometimes there isn't any and it's hard to tell.
Yeah, sometimes the repost is really hard to tell. But one thing I loved about the sheep scene, though, is that they show us what Polyphemus's point of view is, and I love the memes that came out of this because people are like, it's just me without my glasses. But yeah, with Polyphemus's view, we see they blend in perfectly with the sheep, at least, you know, the way that they show it. There's no way to differentiate which one's them other than, like, some of them look a little bit off if you were to stare at the screen for, you know, way too long.
Mm-hmm. And I weirdly got anxiety when you were seeing his perspective, because I was worried that he was going to figure out that it was them. And so I was like, oh, thank God he doesn't figure it out yet. Because there's always the chance with this show that they're going to change stuff, which they did a lot of how this whole interaction happens. And then, yeah. And so this is part when they go back, they go up to the tree. And I just think the scenes of them running around with those sheepskin things on their heads are always funny. That they're literally just like running back and forth. Like, I just picture like if Luke like snapped himself in there a little bit early and he saw them doing that, if he would just been like, what are you doing? He already sees them doing weird things anyway, but he, like, if he saw that, he probably just would have been like, I don't understand what's going on. But it honestly is a very good plan. And it was fun how they figured out that Clarisse was down there too by Percy just saying there's two, and they're like, and they're both, and Annabeth just being like, who else could possibly be here? And then him telling her, I love the Clarisse and Percy dynamic so much in this season. It's exactly perfect how it should be, of like siblings, or like, I think they described it themselves as like friends, but they just don't want to admit that they are friends, and so they act like they don't like each other, but it's very like friendly. And I just liked how you know, when Annabeth is like, we barely had enough time to get Grover out, how are we going to get two people out? And Percy like, we could just leave Clarisse here. And he's like, kidding, sort of. Like, I think I'm kidding. That's exactly the kind of dynamic that I want him and Clarisse to have. And so I'm glad that they already have it in this episode, in like this early season.
Yeah, one thing that I noted too with this whole scene of him going up to the tree was that Percy, he notices the fleece, but his first priority is Grover, because he looks down that hole and, you know, tries to assess the situation that's going down, like, in the hole versus, you know, like, immediately going for the fleece, where we see Luke, who takes a portal to the island and just makes a beeline for the fleece, even though he sees Polyphemus is fighting somebody, and he has to know it's Annabeth. I mean, Polyphemus is fighting a literal, like, you know, nothing.
Yeah.
So who does he know that has an invisibility cap?
We'll talk about that when we get to it, but in a little bit. But I really first off, I love the fact that Clarisse, this honestly is something that I probably would do in this sort of situation too, like come up with an entire plan inside my head that I'm ready to enact the moment that I have to do it, instead of just sitting there being afraid. And one part, I have to say, this is so funny. I noticed the second time I watched the episode when they show her and Grover inside when they see Percy. First off, the fact that Percy is smiling so much when he sees Grover, where he looks like the happy emoji face, is adorable. That he's so happy just to see that Grover is like there and still alive and he's okay.
With the fleece.
Yeah, with the sheepskin still over his head. And he doesn't like hear them trying to warn him or anything. He can't really hear them anyway. But I'm laughing because one thing that I didn't notice the first time we watched the episode is when they show that, and then Clarisse starts doing her plan where she is like literally like just picks Grover up and just slams him across onto the mirror to get like a piece of glass to like try to get them out of their binds or whatever, so they can try to help them and stop them from getting caught in this trap. The thing that killed me the second time I watched it was when Grover is like asking her, like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? Like, why are you throwing? He doesn't understand what she's doing. It's not like she actually would tell him or anything. She's Clarisse. But the thing that killed me is when she picks up the piece of glass and starts, like, messing and, like, to cut the rope. You hear him go, like, oh.
Oh, that sucks. Oh.
I, like, paused the episode to just laugh. Because I'm like, this is, like, one of the last times we get to laugh in this episode. And that was just so funny that, like, through, like, his thing that you can hear, like, through his bandana thing in his mouth, you hear him be like, oh, that's what you were doing. You're not just throwing me around for no reason. That was just so funny.
Oh my gosh, I love that Clarisse gets these two little, like, muscle mommy moments, because we know Dior was, like, training in the gym to look stronger. So that's one of them where she picks up Grover. But something next that happens is that Percy, he has to decide whether or not he's going to drop down, because pretty quickly, once he assesses the situation, he gets Annabeth over there. She ties some sort of fancy knot that, like, if anybody knows knots, tell me what kind of knot that is. I have a theory that she chose one that was very strategic, that would, like, be great to repel with. But I don't know if they pay attention to detail as much as I'm thinking. But either way, anyways, so they come up with their plan. They're gonna save both of them. Of course they are. And so she helps Percy start rappelling down into the hole by tying off the rope. She's up there by the tree. And by this time, Clarisse has fully gotten the rope staff off. They take off their gags, and both of them are like, it's a trap, it's a trap. And Grover suggests to Percy, you should climb up. And I don't know which option is worse here, of, like, climbing up where Polyphemus is literally looking down the hole, or letting yourself drop down.
I feel like climbing up was, like, his only option, really, that if he climbed up and got out of the hole and then tried to just, like, fight Polyphemus or run from him, or you know, Annabeth would play, like, her diversion games to mess with them. I feel like that was the only option he had. There's many times in this episode where I just think, like, if he did get out of the hole, like, I feel like he would have died. Because the stuff in the book, the way that it happens, I reread all the chapters from this part in the book the other day, the day before we watched the episode, because I just couldn't remember all the specifics of it. But in the book, they're inside, like, the cave already, and Tyson shows up to, like, let them out. Like, the whole part in the book is he hangs on to one of the sheep when he opens up the door to the cave, and Annabeth runs in when she's invisible. But in this one, in the book, they have the whole, like, rope bridge thing that's, like, their barrier, and the sheep are, like, man-eating sheep in the book. The sheep are just, like, sheep in this episode, and so they're not a barrier. And instead, the barrier is the hole at the top where they think the golden fleece is. And so in this version, they wouldn't go inside because they think that they're going to get caught in there if they do. And so there is, like, no other option. But yeah, if he was outside, like, the same thing wouldn't have happened the same way, but I think he would have just died. I think he would have died. I think that Polyphemus would have just killed him, and they wouldn't have had time to, like, even find the golden fleece and figure all that stuff out like they do with Annabeth, because he would have just been super dead. I honestly, I don't know, like, watching the episode, it's like, obviously things go the way that they do when he's stuck inside. But I don't know what he would have done if he was outside, because he couldn't be invisible the way that Annabeth was. And Polyphemus and him would have been a whole thing, because Polyphemus would have wanted to get mad at him for being, like, another Poseidon kid and all this kind of stuff. And so I don't think it would have gone I think it would have gone somehow even worse if he actually got out. But either way, he didn't. Polyphemus shows up and knocks down.
He drops down into Clarisse's arms.
Hi. Okay.
His comedic timing of hi, and then when the comedic timing of both of them, when he says hi, and when she then drops him, and then when he's on the ground, he's just like, okay. and gets up. I was like, that's exactly how Clarisse and Percy should be. This is exactly what I wanted.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for making this happen. Because it was just so funny. That was their dynamic is always so funny to me because it's like they like each other. They just like play. I think Percy just plays along with this game where they act like they don't because he's like she's gonna get mad if we actually acknowledge that we get along or something. So we just keep doing this.
So while all of this is going down in the cave, Annabeth is up by the tree. She notices that the fleece is not the real fleece, that it's painted gold, which, like, bro, you work with sheep, you work with fleece. What did you try to dye it with? First of all, that's where my, like, fashion design brain goes of, like, what did you try to dye this fleece with that it's not drying while it's hanging up in the sun? It's still dripping. And honestly, part of me kind of was, like, underwhelmed by it before we even knew that it was a fake, because I was like, that doesn't look very gold for a golden fleece. So the fact that it ended up being a trick was it was an interesting twist. It's what lets Annabeth know that it's a trick basically at the same time that's Percy's finding out. And so she's forced to do the nobody bit at this point where Polyphemus is coming up. He realizes that they've fallen for the trap. And so she goes into invisibility mode with her cap. And one reason that they changed this that I can totally see, like this one makes so much more sense, is so she doesn't say she's nobody in this one. She says nobody sent me. And like starts teasing him with details about what happened with Odysseus. And in the books, it's Percy's narrator voice that tells us what happened. He's like, oh, so this nobody trick, it comes from the Odyssey, and here's what happened. But we can't do narrator voice for all of you book purists. It would be so awkward. So this is one reason where we can see very clearly they had to change it. They had to give us that introduction to the nobody joke so that she could play it up.
And it was interesting because in the books, it becomes like this thing that Percy and Annabeth do. Like, Annabeth starts it, but then when Percy starts wanting to, they have to fight Polyphemus, he starts saying it too. Like, nobody wants to fight you, and things like that. And so it's like it becomes more of like a tag team effort. I know you made a note saying that one thing you noticed is that when she starts doing it in this version, where she's the only one outside and nobody else is around, instead of her doing it while they're all in the cave together, is they all look scared when they hear her start doing it. It's like, yeah, they're all scared because they don't know what's going to happen. That like when her invisibility thing is always their biggest move when plans go wrong, purely just because whoever they're trying to go up against can't see them. And so they have like an element of surprise that they, including Luke, in the season 1 finale, they almost like forget that she can do that, and almost like just don't expect her to be there. But for her to be like telling Polyphemus that she's there and then trying to fight, especially because she's the only one without extra like powers or anything like that. And they're all just like, oh God, like we haven't got out of here yet. We haven't figured out a plan of how to get out of here yet. And so we can't help back her up. And they're just right away from the beginning, I liked how they were just afraid for her, knowing that this trick can't last very long, that they have to come up with something because it's only going to last for a couple minutes before he does something else. And one thing I thought was interesting was about how when they go to look for when they realize, like, we need to actually find the actual golden fleece. I always like on this show where they, like, it feels like they're trying to piss off the classics people on purpose which I appreciate because they're annoying, by showing things of how things work in the myth, but like using that against people by people assuming that the myth of the golden fleece says is up in Polyphemus's tree. And so they have this big tree where there is a golden fleece, but it's a fake. And so then you generally don't know where it is. And you're wondering how they're going to find it and where it is and all that kind of stuff. I just like the fact that Grover was the one to figure out where the golden fleece was. Just because it's always nice when Grover has, like, none. Clarisse and Percy, it would have taken way longer to find it. They probably never would have found it in
Yeah.
time. It's something that he could do, and I thought it was funny that Polyphemus like just threw it in a corner, like what I do with my laundry.
I feel like she works so well with Annabeth that she really would have been a choice, like a great choice for a quest partner. To kind of make a reference, so Dior played Santana from Glee as a child, for those of you guys that don't know. And Santana in Glee is a part of like a trio group of girls in some of the earlier episodes. And they make jokes later on where they like the musical numbers that they do unprompted are completely unplanned, but these three girls are able to synchronize because they just know each other so well. And so I like totally thought of that because I always somewhat have the Dior Santana connection in my brain. And it's like, oh, she synchronized enough with Annabeth to realize that Annabeth is buying them time. And also, I'm 100% on Clarisse's side when they find the fleece, when Annabeth gets knocked out, and when Percy reveals to Luke, we have the real one, and they're trying to decide what to do. Because I believe Annabeth would have like been like, don't do it. I'm not worth it. Like, just keep the fleece. Keep it safe.
I don't agree with him at all. But I also don't agree that Annabeth would necessarily say that, because I don't think Annabeth wants to die. She might, and she also might say that,
well, yeah,
but
she wouldn't want to die, but I don't think.
Don't say that. Yeah. Don't take somebody's word when they say like, I'm fine with sacrificing myself for the good of the quest, because that's just like, we'll talk about it later. But that's just such a heavy thing to put on somebody else's feet, because somebody else has to be the one to be doing that choice. Clarisse, they did such a good job with Clarisse in this season though, because I wasn't upset with her in that scene, like at all. I completely understood why she felt like that, and why she thought that. Like, I didn't see anybody really like overly upset with her or mad at her or whatever. And so I felt like they did such a good job of building up Clarisse's characterization in this season and making you get to know her and actually like her, that when she made that decision, you actually understood where she was coming from. When if this had happened like earlier in the season, everyone would have been like really angry at her for even bringing something like that up. So this is the part when Luke arrives, and when Luke like teleports his stupid self onto this island, I was like terrified. Like terrified. And here's the part that's funny about how like my brain works about stuff. I knew going into this episode that it was going to end with him kidnapping Annabeth, because Variety is a horrible place, and I forgot that they do this, because Variety was known when the Star Wars movies were coming out every year, and I was in that fandom. After The Last Jedi, they gave away that Luke died in their review of The Last Jedi. And they said it was like a spoiler-free review. And they just like gave it away. And so many people after that, they would just, if everyone would like post something and be like, remember not to read anything that Variety puts out when the movie is coming out, because they just give away huge spoilers without any warning whatsoever. So they put out an article that I just saw when I was just looking at one of the updates accounts. And in the middle of the article, they were like, it was like an article about them filming, and they were on set when they were filming the 7th episode. And in the middle of the article, they're just like, everyone's on this set when Luke has taken Annabeth and he's holding her hostage on his ship. And I was like, what? And like everyone who read the article was like, what? And like our friend Sophia sent that to me, and I was like, I'm so mad in my head right now that I forgot that Variety does this. But I'm also really mad that I know about that. But even knowing about that doesn't change like the emotions that I felt this whole episode, because like I just said, when Luke shows up on
Yeah.
this island, I was so scared. And I was just like, and it shows how good they, at least to us, that they made him a scary character, because as soon as he shows up, I knew we both had the same reaction of like, he is a loose cannon. He will do literally anything. I don't know what he's going
Yeah.
to do now that he's here. Why is he here? He wasn't here in the original story. I have no idea what's going on and what he's going to do. There's no way that him being here could possibly end well, which it does not.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're just like, why are you here? Like, go away. Why leave? Like, why are you here with your stupid sword, like, that can kill everyone? And you could have killed Polyphemus. Like, you could have done that if you actually cared, because his sword can kill magical and demigod and magical people and human people. So he could have actually done something, but instead he's just like watching Polyphemus having like a mental collapse after Annabeth triggers the heck out of him with his PTSD from Odysseus, watching him just like running around the hills screaming, and he just sees that and just keeps going. But the rest of the episode, I love that they did that, because it makes you feel like the fear that you get to when the cave scene fully starts happening, because you're just afraid of what he's going to do. He could do, there's nothing that he won't do. And so you're just like, this is really, really bad. No matter what, this is really, really bad, especially after his prior time of trying to talk to Annabeth. I'm like, there's no way that this isn't going to be a absolutely horrible thing, no matter what it is.
Started to make me more and more nervous as like the Luke sequences were playing out in this episode, was that it takes so long for people to notice him. Like, it's legitimately not until the scene with Annabeth switches. So once they find the golden fleece, for whatever reason, Polyphemus can sense this. He can sense that they found the right one, runs back to the cave, and Annabeth runs after him. And that's where the whole sequence of like Polyphemus hits her, she gets knocked out, and then Luke finally gets revealed to everybody else. And of course it's Percy that sees her with a very big reaction. But a little bit before that, we have a TYSON sequence. And this is where Percy gets to find out that TYSON is really alive, because TYSON is the first one to show up when Polyphemus knocked out Annabeth. Yeah.
Before we go into that, one thing I did want to say is when Luke goes up to the tree and he finds the fake golden fleece and he realizes that it's not real, he sees Annabeth like running like back up the hill or whatever, and the way I interpreted that, like, we obviously don't know, but the way I interpreted that is that he stays because he sees Annabeth. That's what it felt like, was that he was like running after her to try to abduct her, and it, like, he clearly does by the end. But it felt like that's why he stayed on the island once he realized that the golden fleece was fake. I feel like he would have just left and thought that the golden fleece was somewhere else. Like, Allison was on that island when Grover first got there, and they thought that it was there, and then realized, and then, were like, never mind by the end of that scene. And so it felt like he just saw her there and was like, oh, I can go and talk to her because she's alone. And then it turns into this whole just god-awful thing. The writer of this episode is Albert Kim, who is the new executive producer for this season that we saved from Avatar: The Last Airbender. He was their scapegoat for them not functioning as a production. And the director of this episode is more why I wanted to talk about this, is Catronia Mackenzie. She also directed, I believe she directed the last episode too. Oh my god, the directing in this episode is really good. I really, really love it, especially this part. It was such a smart idea to have them stuck inside the cave and be seeing everything through this tiny little part of the door that opened when Polyphemus came in to stop them from leaving with the fleas. And so everything that you see going on is all from Percy's perspective. You can't do a scene like that if Walker isn't really good at his job. And he does a really great job with this, because that's really hard to have to show everything is on his face. Like, he's even the one telling, like, Clarisse and Grover what is going on outside. And it was just such a cool idea to show all these things from this tiny little perspective, where, like, us as the audience even is like sitting there like, what is going on? Like, what is going on right now? There's so many things happening. Could somebody tell me what's going on? But basically, Annabeth comes back. She gets smacked by Polyphemus, which is what happens in the book. It's different in the book in the way that they're all inside the cave together. She's still injured in the book. Like, she gets injured when when her hat falls off and he has her, like, by her foot. And then in the book, he drops her and she, like, lands on her head, and that makes her more injured, where she's passed out. And one thing I thought was interesting because of stuff with Percy is that in the book, he has this moment where he gets really angry. Like, in the book, they're trying to fight Polyphemus after Annabeth is hurt. He thinks that at this point that Tyson is still dead. And so he's thinking, there's this whole paragraph where he's thinking, like, Tyson would have been alive if he wasn't on this quest. You're trying to kill all of my friends. Annabeth is hurt. And he gets really mad and is able to actually hurt Polyphemus, where he could have, like, killed him.
And we pointed this out a couple times, but I just want to say it really loud and clear for everybody, is that Luke notices Annabeth fighting Polyphemus. He notices it multiple times. He can deduce, even when she's invisible, like, that's what she's doing. And yet, he doesn't go out and help her. Just saying.
Yeah, he like, almost is, like, going out to, like, try to watch her, because I think he more wants to talk to her alone.
Percy's not like you. He's a hero.
Percy really needed to hear that after what he had been thinking about himself, especially since he thought that Tyson died. And so I love that, because Tyson is just that person for Percy. I was so glad that he got to, like, hear that, and we got to see Percy's face for hearing something like that. It was very sweet. And I also just liked them having that kind of conversation, like two Cyclops having a conversation, being like, humans or demigods think that they're better than us just because of whatever, but they're just as bad as we are. That's why I don't think that loyalty is ever a fatal flaw, because they think that, because they're told that, because demigods are told that they're supposed to sacrifice whatever and anything and everything to just do the quest and have it end the way that they are supposed to. And people like this are the people that get hurt when they do those things. And we're getting those people's perspective now of them saying, like, yeah, I would also feel like that if I was, like, trampled over by demigods all the time to like, get a quest for their godly parent. And Percy isn't the one like that. And I don't see that as a bad thing. But we're obviously going to talk more about that as this next scene goes on, because this is the scene that gave everybody a heart attack. For this part of the episode, it was really gratifying to watch Tyson just body slam Polyphemus and literally, like, pick him up and just, like, push him off of a cliff. Even if Percy then is scared that his brother just died again, that he saw him come back only for him to die again, and it's just like, oh my, can somebody, like, get the child to, like, breathe and do, like, some breathing exercises like I used to have to do to not have panic attacks, because I'm pretty sure that's what's going on this whole scene. But this, directing wise, I thought was a really great scene, like, transition scene, where us as the audience, we see Tyson push and go off the cliff with Polyphemus. And there's this couple seconds where Percy is yelling Tyson's name and he doesn't get a response. And so he's scared that you can see Percy's face that he is, like, worried about Tyson. And then all of a sudden, Luke comes like into his vision, and you see him like back up like this.
Annabeth? Annabeth! No.
Like move, just instinctually move back, and is just scared. And you can see that he's just like scared, and it's just, and it, this was one thing I know we both wanted to discuss, is that there was some discussion about Percy being angry in this scene. People compared him to Anakin, which is a bigger topic that we can talk about when the season's over, really. But just to like touch on that idea, the idea where people were comparing him to Anakin, to the point that People magazine made a post about comparing him to Anakin during one part of this scene. Is he angry or is he scared? Like one thing I thought was, it was interesting to see people's reactions, because I have complex PTSD. We both do. And like part of having that is that you don't know how to like name emotions that you're feeling. But when I was watching this scene, I was like, he's not angry ever in it. He's really scared. He's terrified. And like Walker's really good at his job. And so you can see all those things like right in his face. Like his face is all that you can see. And you can see all the different emotions that Percy is going through during this part. And when he sees Luke, he's not angry. He's scared. Like, just because somebody raises their voice and starts yelling or whatever, or like talking louder or whatever, doesn't mean that they're yelling in anger. And it, because he's begging Luke not to hurt Annabeth. Like literally begging him, like, do not touch her, and just saying like, he's literally like trying to almost like negotiate with him, like, please don't hurt her, please don't touch her. And do you know how horrible of a person you have to be, that when somebody shows up, they're that scared of you, and they are afraid that you're going to hurt somebody that you say you care about, because when they're unconscious. That a lot of the discussion was about Percy being scared, or Percy being mad, and that he was mad at Luke. And it's like, it more to me came off of him just like desperate to try to get Luke not to, because that would be horrible to like have to sit there and watch him do something to Annabeth, knowing that he can't do anything. He can't do anything to stop him. And Luke is such a dangerous person that it's like, you don't want to leave after. I mean, especially when you consider where Percy's mind is when he thinks about Luke. He went out into the forest with him, with Annabeth, granted there as like invisible with him, but still he went out there seemingly alone with him, and Luke was about to stab him to death. And that was the last time that somebody was seemingly alone with him. And so that's really scary. And so I guess I just almost like want people to rewatch the scene and like look at his face and and just like, people yell when they're scared. They don't only yell when they're angry. And I feel like there's a lot of, we've talked about this before, but I feel like there's a lot of like, people expect like male characters to act a certain way. And I feel like people think that Percy should be angry and like jealous and these sort of things in this scene or like in this episode. And so they're almost like expecting it to be there, but it's really not there. The whole Dark Percy thing feels like a fandom created like event happening right now, because a lot of the scenes that people are pointing to as scenes like that, he's not even angry. He's like scared. And I wouldn't call that dark. I wouldn't call him begging Luke not to hurt his best friend and all that like a dark emotion or anything like that. Like, that's just, protection is not a dark feeling, I guess, was the overall thing I felt like I needed to say. Was there's a lot of discussion about how like, it's just weird to see like a character like Percy who is protective of the people he cares about, but protection is not inherently like violent or like angry sort of emotion. Like, you're not necessarily you can be angry when you're trying to protect somebody, that's true, but you can do that without that. And he's not really in that sort of place. Like, he's not a danger to himself and others when he's protecting people. And so when people see him doing these sort of things, they almost like expect him to be acting like whatever Dark Percy is. And so they see these scenes and they think that's what this is. Like, a lot of people are making the comparison of him saying, "Don't touch her," to the scene in The Last Olympian where she gets stabbed by Ethan and he says, like, nobody touches her. But in both of those scenes, he's basically doing the same thing. I remember we talked about that in The Last Olympian, that we thought it was interesting that people describe that scene as Percy's like Dark Percy, and he's like scary and trying to, he's being scary in that
And
scene.
romantic. That's the other part that's like puzzling, is why do people see this as romantic?
I don't know. And that scene, especially when we read in the books, where like he's trying to if people just stabbed Annabeth, he's doing what he has to get people to back off of them so that they can leave. But he's not like angry filled, because if he was, he would have tried to go after the people that hurt her. But instead, he's wanting them to back off so that they can leave and he can go help her. He doesn't even try to go after Ethan or anyone else. He just wants to get out of there once he realizes that she's injured. And so that's not exactly something he's like, I feel like people are imagining a lot of scenes that happen in things where like the male character sees his love interest get like hurt or killed or whatever. And they go off in like a revenge filled fantasy to go and enact revenge against people that hurt them. Like, for some reason, the movie that's popping in my head is The Mummy. Is in The Mummy Returns, those like horrible 10 minutes when you think that Evie is dead. When Rick sees that Evie is dead, he just gets up and goes after the mummy to go and kill him once and for all, because he's just so angry. That makes sense in that sort of movie, and for that sort of character to be doing that. But it didn't for this scene. I almost I don't mean to sound like we're like a killjoy or something, but I always feel the need to remind people that he is a child.
Yes,
he's a
13-year-old child at that.
He's 13 in this scene. People are people comparing him to Anakin, when the scene they're comparing him to Anakin to is after Anakin literally kills children, like little children that he knows that they all look and that are expecting him to help them when they're in danger. And then he strangles his wife to death. That's where he is and he's fighting his best friend to kill him too. And just to like reiterate this fact, Percy in this scene sees Annabeth looking really bad. He sees her around Luke, and then they're trying to figure out a way to save her while Luke is the only one that could do it. Somebody who is the antithesis of trustworthy. That's what you're comparing to Anakin genociding everyone he's ever met? Like, to a 13-year-old child who is scared? Like, it like makes me sad to see so much discussion about how dangerous and scary Percy is. Whenever he shows just emotions, like that he cares about someone, because I just always think of like boys, like young boys, but even like men that are involved in this fandom, and see the way that people talk about that. Like, I interacted with some people online where they were saying like, he's allowed to be dark. And I'm like, you guys get right that being protective of somebody and not wanting them to die doesn't make you dark or a dark person. That you making a mistake and getting angry does not inherently change who you are as a person. Like, I had many conversations today of people trying to convince me basically that Percy has gone through all of these things, and so that inherently makes him a dark person. And I was like, do you understand what you're saying? That to say that a kid that's gone through a lot of traumatic events could only be that those things inherently change you that's what every trauma victim thinks. We all think that the things that we've gone through change us in a negative way, that it makes us a worse person or a dark person or a messed up person. That's not actually true, though. That's not true.
Yeah.
So, like, my dad did not. I'm never going to admit that or believe that my dad, like, inherently changed me as a person in a negative way, because that feels bad. I don't know why people want it to be his fatal flaw, I guess. Like, I get why. I get that a lot of the things that we think are probably never going to be the things that, like, the show goes with, because we're talking about things from a perspective of, like, child abuse or, like, trauma survivors, whatever you want to call us. And so that perspective is never, like, the, like, mainstream thing. Like, I get it. Something that is made by Disney isn't going to just go with what we want. They're going to say that his fatal flaw is, like, personal loyalty, because it's a dramatic flaw. It's dramatic to imagine, like, Percy, like, running off and needing to do all these things whenever his friends are in danger, because his friends are always in danger because of everything that's going on around him. But, like, when we think about that, we think about that from, like, somebody who's been abused perspective, like Charlie, like, Percy has, and it feels just, like, really damaging to think about that, especially when you have a character that's one of his biggest traumas is being betrayed a lot. And that has come up, like, many times already in this season.
Clara thinks I might destroy Olympus. Bro, did you know this whole time? But you said your mother was a naiad. You knew that. So how did you know that?
It just feels like the backwards thing to believe that for a kid that didn't have any friends for, like, over a decade of his life, and then finally finds people, to be told that because he cares about those people, now that he has a community and, like, a support system besides his mom, that inherently makes him, like, dangerous and bad. It just feels like the opposite thing that you would want. And so I guess part of me just doesn't understand the appeal of that, like, why people want him to do that. And I can guess, like, there's probably some, like, romantic tropes happening that I don't like, because that's usually what it is when I'm asexual and also really traumatized by things involving sex. And so usually when there's something like that going on that people want that I don't get, it usually has to do something with, like, romance and things like that I'm not understanding. The other part of that discussion that we were having was that Percy putting the loyalty that he feels for demigods instead of the gods is dangerous for the gods. Why do I care what the gods think? Like, I don't understand why people go with that. Like, yeah, the gods think that he's dangerous because they can't control him. And they want their children to want to be always trying to please them all the time. That's what abusive, neglectful, whatever parents do. That's what they always want, right? If they want you to always be trying to do that, they lose control of you when you realize that you're never going to get it, and you start living your own life for yourself and stop feeling afraid of trying to get their acceptance all the time. And so I understand why the gods would see him prioritizing people that aren't them as this, like, loose cannon, and you never know what he's going to do, and we need to find a way to scare him out of this so he stops doing this sort of thing. But I guess I don't know why us as the audience would care what the gods think, because why would you? And, like, just think of, like, every depiction you have of the gods in this season. Why would you care what they think?
Yeah.
I don't get it. It feels very backwards to be like, being like, well, the gods think he's really dangerous, so we're just going to go with that. I'm like, but the gods think, like, a 13-year-old child is dangerous because they have problems. That's not, there isn't anything about them in the books or even in the show that makes me think that I should believe what they think. Next part of this scene that we wanted to discuss is, do we believe that Luke is telling the truth? because we both thought that he was lying. And
Yeah.
it was interesting to see that that was a unpopular opinion. Besides, well, our friends agreed with us, but but I will say that um, I am not sure if I really don't believe him completely for this entire scene. I do think
Yeah.
I will concede that it is possible that at first he thinks that Annabeth is dying.
Yeah.
Because the way I thought of that was like you said before, like he could feel guilty about the fact that he didn't try to go help her before and just like let her run around with Polyphemus until it was too late because he was trying to do stupid strategy games. But I also thought that he might have just thought that she was dying because of just thinking that things are happening again, like what happened with Thalia, and just like assuming the worst. Because the one thing that the reason part of why I thought that and why you thought that is that in the books, Annabeth is very much not dying.
Yeah.
In the book, she's injured and like she's passed out and she's not doing great. Like she has a concussion of some kind and she has broken ribs. The reason why it's a big problem in the books where they need her to be healed by the Golden Fleece is because they're still trying to fight Polyphemus. And so they have to like carry her, like Clarisse in the book ends up literally carrying her around on her back. And the reason why Polyphemus sinks their ship when they're trying to leave is because they're going slower because they're having to carry her around everywhere, and it just makes them move slower when they're trying to be as fast as possible to leave as fast as they can. And so she's not like in actual mortal danger in the books, and so it feels like this thing of we thought that Luke was lying, that he was just saying that she was dying, so to basically like get what he needed from that situation. The fact that he was watching Annabeth makes me think that a good part of this has to always be a lie, because he was obviously already wanting to talk to her alone and wanting to abduct her in some way. Between like the iris message and like watching her run around and deciding to stay on the island and whatnot and go after her in some way because of that. And so I will say that the one part of the scene when he looks at her and he says she's dying, and then of course Percy freaks out and it says, "We found the Golden Fleece." It feels like his entire demeanor changes when Percy says, "We have the Golden Fleece, we can heal her with it." And he turns around and he's like, "You found the actual Golden Fleece?" Like for a second he was just looking at Annabeth and was worried about her. And then the next second he's like looking at Percy like, "Wait, you have the Golden Fleece?" And when Percy is like having a mental breakdown about trying to figure out how to heal her without just giving the Golden Fleece to Luke, like one of the best parts I thought, and it just shows like how good all of these young actors are, like how good Arian and Dior and Walker are, not only with their characters but their chemistry with each other. That when Percy turns around and he tells them like the line, "We have to give the Golden Fleece to Luke," and Percy's basically like having a panic attack when he's telling them that, like he's not even standing up straight all the way. And just him saying that one line, Clarisse is like, "Are you crazy?" And like it just shows like how much they have the characters down, that Percy saying something like that is so wild and out of character that they're both just, all of them are like, "What am I like?" Even Percy looks like he doesn't even know what he's actually saying right now because it's so not something he would normally ever say. But when he goes back and tells Luke, like, you know, this is the part where we're quite sure that he's a lying little bastard, that he says that when Percy tells him like, "Why don't you teleport into here?" And so and like teleport
us out.
Yeah, teleport us out, or teleport like, or do something like that so that we can give her the Golden Fleece and she can be fine. But then, but Luke says that he can't do that because the teleport thing only works like one time with one person. And the way he puts it is like, "Oh, I already came here by myself this one time. And so that's the only way that I can do it. And so I can't like put like a portal in the cave that you guys can use to get out of there or something. And so one thing that I forgot about that our longtime follower Isa reminded me of, which, like, thank you, ma'am, is that in the, like, Percy even references it. He says, like, you did that last year at camp, right? Why don't you do it again? The scene when they're at camp, when he does it, when they're talking about it, Luke very emphatically keeps saying we.
This is our way out.
Way out of what?
Camp. In their control. Backbiter can open secret doors. We can stay on the run as long as it takes.
Stop saying we.
Like, we will go through this portal. We will go through this portal. We will travel with this thing. The Backbiter has a portal thing that can take us wherever we need to go. And we can do this and we can do that. We talking about both of them doing it the whole time. And it's like, okay, you could argue that Luke was lying back then at the end of camp, and that he was going to have Percy go through the portal and then, like, trap him there with Kronos or something. I don't know. But that's hard to believe. Just the reason why it's hard for me to believe is that the basic plan of Kronos and Luke was to keep what they were doing secret for as long as possible. And that's the whole reason why Luke has to come up with the mole thing with Selena at camp, is because camp finds out that he's, fully planning and that Kronos is back and all these things are happening before they would want the gods to know about it. And so the whole, like, the original ending in the book where he goes out there and just poisons Percy, he's doing that because that's the way for him to, like, stay at camp. He's going to kill the kid that could get him in trouble and could figure out what's going on. So he kills Percy, and he could say that Percy was the one that stole the thing in the first place and blah, blah, blah. It's hard for me to believe that Luke would have had Percy go through that alone, and because then he would have had to, like, tell people that Percy joined, like, Luke's, like, Kronos' side to make it look like he was the one that was the betrayer the whole time. But then he would have had to tell everybody about what they were doing way earlier than they actually wanted to do. Their whole plan was they wanted people to be able to, he wanted to be able to stay at camp and, like, spy on everybody and convert people when he was there and be able to know what's going on there all the time until they were ready to wipe it out. And so it's hard to believe that he would do that. That's, like, the only thing I can say. But either way, he's lying. He has to be lying. And that part especially, his face looks very different when he initially says, like, oh, Annabeth's dying. And then when he knows that they have the golden fleece, when he turns around and looks at Annabeth for a second and then looks at them again. And Percy is, like, having, like, a mental collapse, as you can imagine, like, knowing, like, they need this to save everybody at camp. He just had a nightmare at the beginning of this episode about a bunch of dead children. Those would be there because of Luke. He doesn't trust that Luke would even, like, take care of Annabeth or anything like that. And so, but the part when Percy is, like, trying to
eventually, though.
Yeah, the part when Percy's trying to bargain with him and say, like, this is the only way that this will work is if you make a thing where we can get out of this cave. That's the only way this is going to work. And Luke just looks at him and he's like, Percy, she's dying. And the way that he says it is just, like, very unemotional. And it just makes me think, like, I feel like that you're exaggerating.
I thought, like, the moment she took the breath, I was expecting him to walk away. Like, I didn't think he would fully leave her to die. But we both thought that he wouldn't end up taking her. He'd somehow run off with the fleece at this moment.
Yeah, we were pretty sure that after they saw that she was fine, that he was just going to pick it up and be like, bye, and leave. And so that gives you an idea of how we see that character. But this part is such a good part of it. Just such a good part of the episode of just, You like what you were saying before, you understand why Clarisse is like, we can't do that. And the thing I like about it is that it makes sense for her character because of what happened on the Ironside, that the Ironclad blew up.
Yeah.
And so she on that was going for like the plan of that was dangerous, but like doing both. And so now she doesn't want to take the chance of doing that again. And Clarisse in the book is somebody that can sometimes be like kind of like selfish or one track minded. And so I saw people appreciating the fact that that even though she is a much better, well-rounded character, she still has like that flaw about herself that she's just like, no, I'm not giving you the fleece. Annabeth wouldn't want me to do it. And it's also just like a thing of, that's very unfair to me. This is how I feel about this kind of stuff. It's very unfair to say that because I don't think any of the kids at camp would be okay with Annabeth dying for them. They would feel really guilty. And that's like part of the whole thing with this sort of decision is that it's absolutely impossible to make this sort of choice, much less when you're 13 and people are expecting you to make this decision. And this is why we keep going in these circles with people thinking that loyalty is this fatal flaw. It fundamentally does not make sense to either one of us to imagine that it is a flaw for a 13-year-old child to not want to just like leave their friend dead for like the good of the quest, especially in an episode like this where you see like how Polyphemus has been attacking people because Odysseus did that sort of thing to him many generations ago. And so it's like, why would that ever be the right decision to just be like the ends justify the means? Like that's not like I don't know, like that's just not something that I think is ethically right. And when I read the books, it didn't seem like that's the kind of story they were trying to tell. And so it's so weird to me that people accept that as like, that it was a flaw for him to want to, this is a thing that me and our friend, Jean say a lot, that if the way that you like fix things is by children dying, then your plan is worth nothing and you need to stop. And literally, if children have to die in order for you to succeed, you don't deserve to succeed. If that is the cost of winning, then you don't get to win. Period. Yeah. There's this idea that in a lot of things that tell you that you should do those things, that you could sacrifice the one for the good of the many, sort of. No, I reject that. I will always reject that, especially when it's children that don't have anybody. It goes in like the face of what the books have always said, and so it just doesn't make sense to me that this would be presented in this way, and that you're supposed to think that Percy should just like let Annabeth die. And it's like there's so many questions in this thing. Like, if it scares me to imagine Tyson coming back when Luke was still there. If they would have just waited another 20 seconds, like what would have happened to Tyson or what Luke would have tried to do to Tyson if he would have come back to like mess up, because Tyson would have just opened up the door. Yeah. And then none of this would have mattered. He would have, that's scary to me because Luke needs the Golden Fleece. He's going to get the Golden Fleece. He's not somebody who is stopped by hurting people. He would have done something god awful to still get the Golden Fleece from them. I don't know what it would have been, but he would have done something just horrendous in order to make that happen. And so it's one of those things of, in this one scene, in this one time, they don't know a way to fix it, but you have to believe that this is not something that I can live with. And so there has to be another way for us to fix this, because these options don't work. And I guess the one part of this one scene that I thought, the main part that people were comparing Percy to Anakin was when Grover is arguing on behalf of him to Clarisse. And I love the things that Grover is saying, by the way. The last thing he says is, Annabeth is a warrior. Do you really think? And I'm like, yeah, Annabeth is a warrior. Do you really think she wanted to die this way? Or, like, just have all these people who care about her and just, like, let her sit there and slowly die if she really is dying? When they could have stopped her when she deserves much better than that. But this was the part that a lot of people compared to Anakin. But to me, this scene isn't him looking angry in that rage-filled way like Anakin or another character like him is. It felt more like he's just, like, making a decision of he's not really listening to them, but it's like a thing of, no, I can't live with myself if I just let her die, even if it means that Luke gets the fleece and we have to stop him now and get it back from him. I cannot live with myself if I let something like that happen. And so a lot of people said that was the part where he was angry, but all he does is walk up to Clarisse and take the fleece out of her hands. He doesn't even, like, hurt her or try to hurt anybody. He just walks up and takes, like, he's like, this is stupid. We're not having this argument anymore. I'm just going to take this and end this now because we're just wasting time.
So people have talked about how this scene, how him choosing to give Luke the fleece is an example of that loyalty fatal flaw, including the writer of this episode, which I know we're going against canon saying this now, and I don't care.
No.
And it's because we try to make our audience other trauma survivors. There are so many in-text examples of Percy not giving up the entire quest to save somebody. So in The Lightning Thief, he leaves his mom in Hades. You know, he leaves her there not knowing if Hades is going to honor the deal that he comes up with him of, like, hey, so I'll get your helm back, but you got to give me my mom back. And then in Titan's Curse, which we're going to probably see this scene, there is a part, they're in a museum. It's an art museum. I can't remember which art museum, but they just fought the Nemean lion, and then, like, Luke's guys come out. And two Dracaeni bring out Annabeth, if I'm remembering this scene correctly. And Percy sees this. He sees all of this going down. He sees that Annabeth is literally right there. Somebody who has loyalty as their fatal flaw would not be able to hold back in these situations. There's probably plenty more. I mean, like, I think the broadest one I could come up with is the battle in the very, very last book in The Last Olympian. There's probably tons of people trying to hurt Annabeth that he does nothing to at some point, you know? So, I don't think that it's his fatal flaw. I don't ever want to say that him caring about his friends, him being protective over his friends, especially because their relationships tend to be somewhat healthy. I mean, they are still teenagers who have stupid fights, but this isn't a situation where he's, like, enmeshed with them or overly, like, connected with them in a way that's not good. If anything, Annabeth is with Luke right now with her trauma bond and not trusting her own thoughts anymore and wanting to believe there's still some good in him even though he keeps proving otherwise. A fatal flaw, this is another discussion we had. A fatal flaw is a quality in a person that, like, theoretically can be a good quality. So we're not saying that, like, loyalty in some senses can't be a fatal flaw, but when it crosses into enmeshment, that's when I would say it's actually a fatal flaw. And he's not enmeshed with any of these people. Even having a literal empathy link with Grover, he's not enmeshed with him. But yeah, like, a fatal flaw is a quality turned up to the max, to, like, where it's so excessive that it keeps getting in their way. And I don't think this gets in his way enough that it is legitimately his fatal flaw. That's my take.
Yeah, like, there's so many, like you said, there's so many examples, like, in the Sea of Monsters book, he, even in the show, like, Tyson is working on the engines and stuff, even though he knows that it's dangerous. He doesn't stop him from doing that. There's just so many things like that. Like, in Battle of the Labyrinth, Grover and Tyson go off on their own. He doesn't want them to, but he doesn't stop them from doing it when they realize that they need to in order to complete the quest. Nico is out there on his own for a while, by himself, like, homeless, just out there. He doesn't tell anybody about Nico, not because of loyalty to Nico, but because he feels guilty and thinks that Chiron will be mad at him if he finds out that he kept it secret from him. And like he is like, he puts himself in danger in the way that he's like, if Luke doesn't know about Nico, then he'll just come after me instead. But it's not really from a feeling of loyalty. He himself says, like, he just thinks like Nico is a young child and he shouldn't have to be the one to put up with this, so I'm gonna do it instead. But it's not like from a loyalty thing of like, I owe Nico, or Nico deserves this, or I need to do this to make this up to him. It's more of a thing of, I don't want a little kid to be going through this when I remember what it was like when I was that young. I don't want to leave somebody else to deal with this, so I'm just going to do it myself. And all that time when Nico's running around and hates him, he doesn't he lets him do that. He just kind of lets him yell at him and not like him for the majority of the book. And even after they talk to him, he lets him just kind of go off on his own. And Annabeth is the one that is telling him, like, what do you do? Like, what are you doing letting him go? And he's like, we have to let him go and figure things out on his own. He'll come back when he's ready. And it's just, there's a lot of times like that where the fatal flaw of loyalty to me is feeling like you need to take over and save people from themselves in a way that then creates more problems. That's the way that I would imagine it would with Thalia. Like Thalia defending Luke in season 3 and things in Titan's Curse, even though she knows that he tried to kill her and that's why she's even alive and things like that. That's what that kind of thing reminds me of, or like you said, Annabeth with Luke. In this book especially, or this show especially, it just doesn't feel like the way that you would imagine loyalty to be seen as something that is disruptive in his life, because his closest people are always in danger. And he doesn't fly in to stop them in an unhealthy way. He has a hard time with them being in danger as anyone would, but he also trusts that they'll figure it out. He trusts that they'll be able to fix things. Like Grover is gone for a while on his Pan journeys and stuff, and he trusts that he can figure it out and he can do this. He wants to find where Grover is in the Last Olympian, but it's not, he just wants to know if he's okay. It's not a thing of I need to go find him because it's my duty to save him sort of thing. It's just, it never feels unhealthy like that to me. The times that feel unhealthy to me is the stuff with him wanting to save Nico. That feels self-destructive to me in the way of I think that I need to just handle everything myself because so many people have let me down. The whole thing of him feeling betrayed, which has been a theme in this season of the show too, of when you've been betrayed a lot, you just think, I just need to handle everything on my own because everyone's going to let me down. And so the times when he reverts to that is when our friend Ashley also brought up to me how she thought that that's what it was, because in the scene with Cersei, when she turns him into a hamster in the last episode, is when he comes to her by himself and is doing that sort of self-sacrifice sort of thing of you help Annabeth, I'll stay here with you. And that's what leads to him getting taken advantage of by her and getting turned into one of her animals, is when he's no, I don't want to leave, but I want you to help her leave sort of thing. And him doing this plan on his own without telling Annabeth what he's doing kind of stuff. That's usually the times when things go bad. In Battle of the Labyrinth, when the whole mountain explosion thing happens, he doesn't tell her how he's hurt already and things like that, because he wants to protect her and keep her safe. And there's this whole thing in that book about how he keeps thinking in that book about how the only thing that he is good at is doing these big battle moves and saving people when his friends can't do it. He thinks that when he's at the farm, and he thinks that when they find Hephaestus and stuff. And so it's not a thing of I need to do this out of loyalty to her, because he's done it already in that book many times. He doesn't realize that the entire mountain is going to explode when he does it. But he also is I'm just the one that has to handle everything. I'm the prophecy kid, so I just need to handle this myself. And that's more of his thought process in that book. not like, I can't let Annabeth get hurt, and so I need to do this for her. He is instead thinking, like, I need to do this because this is just the only thing that I can offer people, is doing things and helping them in this way. It's just a different motivation, I guess. And so that's part of the fun of, like, I've been saying this with, like, Stranger Things this week. The fandom went off the deep end. But one of the parts of that is that, that I was saying to people is that canon, when you're in a fandom like this, is whatever you want it to be. If we don't want his fatal flaw to be loyalty, it doesn't matter if the writer says that it is, if the show says that it is. We don't think it is. And nobody can make us change our minds. Like, that's not how things work. Like, if the only way that people can also, our friend Ashley also said this to me, that she said in one of my older videos that popped up for her, that she said the reason why people don't get mad at you guys sometimes when you say things is because everything that you guys say is based on evidence from the books. And so they can't, like, shut you down because you are bringing things up from the books as, like, as an example of why you think those things. And the other things that people are saying, there isn't evidence from the books to, like, back them up. And I was like, that's true. Like, as long as we bring up evidence from the books to explain why we feel a certain way, like, you can disagree with us, but if all you have to just show that we're wrong is to say, like, well, the writer said that it was true on the official podcast, it's like, I don't care. Super creepy of Luke when Percy is just, like, wanting to know if Annabeth is okay. Like, she's like, is she okay? Will you just tell me if she's okay? He won't even stay there long enough for him to see if she's actually all right after all of that. And he says, is she okay? And he says, she will be. And then picks her up and takes her. And I was just like, oh, that's so creepy and weird. Like, well, oh my God. And that's what made me think that this whole thing was, like, a low-key plan of his to just find a way to take her. And that was his initial real goal, was to get the place, but also mainly to take her while he's there. And to convince her to whatever he thinks is about to happen. But either way, Luke finally stops traumatizing everybody and leaves. And then Tyson, thank God.
And Walker's acting, oh my gosh. If Walker gets some sort of award, it might be for this episode. I'm just saying, all of the emotions he has.
For the love of God, like, do you know how much, like, it makes sense to me, the director of this episode, when the season had just ended, she did an interview where she said that Walker Scobell has grown into an amazing actor. And she said something about how she was really proud to see him progress in the way that he did. And she also said, like, and Leah is also, like, doing a great job too. But now after watching this episode, I understand why she specifically said him. Because I was trying to say it before when I was talking about her direction of how they chose to do the whole scene where you're watching everything literally on his face. Do you know how much they had to trust him as an actor to know that he could pull that off? And how hard that is? He shows, like, in the span of, like, 10 minutes, he shows, like, the entire range of emotions. Like, one thing after another, after another, after another for this entire, like, 10-minute section of the episode. That is really hard to do, to, like, to be able to show, and also show those specific emotions changing on your face as you're going through the different feelings and stuff. That is so hard. Like, after I watched the episode, I messaged Mandy and was like, can somebody just give him an award? I don't know what award. Somebody just give him one? Like, oh my God, did somebody give him a hug after he filmed this? Because this was so heavy. So heavy. Like, oh my God. Jesus Christ.
So with, like, Tyson too, with him coming back, I love that he's kind of the beacon of hope of the episode. So the first time he comes in, beacon of hope. Second time, once again, it's like, oh my gosh, we thought we were stuck in this cave, and now Polyphemus, that problem's gone, but we have a whole other problem. And then at the very, very end, when they're trying to think, like, okay, we got to go after them. How are we going to go after them? And the decision ends up, like, coming down to Tyson basically summoning Rainbow with the Colonia bracelet, and them realizing, okay, we can make it through there, like, this way. Tyson's just holding up the team at this end little spurt of action.
Yeah, I love that with an Odyssey-inspired thing that we just went through the whole thing with Polyphemus, that they show like how much they're rewarded by treating Cyclops with just basic respect. Like Percy is the one that loves
Yes.
Tyson this much, and look how much you got out of this. Like Clarisse is like, how are we going to get off this island? And it's like, and Tyson, oh, Rainbow can help us, and that's it, done. And it just shows. That's why it's hard for me to believe the whole Fatal Flaw thing, because it shows that his loyalty to people gets rewards for him. Without him treating Tyson as good as he has, they would have been stuck there. And Tyson is the one that bails them out in the original books too. He fights Polyphemus in the original books as well. Like they also have to take Rainbow because Polyphemus ruins their ship in that version. But still, in both versions, Tyson is the one that helps them. And and the thing that I want to say about next week real quick is that the big thing that sparked, of course, people's attention is the voiceover of Annabeth saying that she had a vision when she was in the had the golden fleece on her, that they can save Thalia. And I was like, this is like the do or die time for Luke. Like that Annabeth is saying to him, like, Luke, we can bring back Thalia. And in order for him to do that, he has to go against Kronos' plans. And we already know what's going to happen because we see him at camp trying to kill everybody. But we don't know how that happens. And that's going to be absolutely brutal. And like the thing that I thought of too is that Percy has like the hat. He has Annabeth's hat. And so it makes, and it's
that too.
And it's so interesting to think about what he's going to see on Luke's ship when he's invisible and people don't think he's there. Like we saw Blackjack in the trailer, and part of Blackjack's whole story is that Luke and his people are abusing all the animals on the ship, and he, like all the monsters that they say can stay there for free, and they won't call them a monster because nobody uses those words here. But in the book, like he is able to talk to them, and like just imagine Tyson's face talking to other monsters, finding out that the demigods on this ship are like torturing them and abusing them. He would be so sad and so upset. And I feel like that's going to be a big part of the episode, is that Percy is going to be able to sneak around the ship and like see things and hear things that he's not supposed to, that Luke wouldn't want them to know. And then pop up in like his estate room again with Annabeth and be like, hey, by the way, why the hell are you like abusing your horses? Why were they telling me about that? Why am I now like freeing them against your will because they were begging me for help? And whatever else they run into that contradicts the things that he said earlier on about how he's running things and things like that. Because you have to know that it's all going to fall apart, that he's going to give a good pitch to Annabeth, but it's all going to fall apart somehow. The stuff with Thalia is going to be god-awful. It has to, and it's going to be horrendous no matter what it is. But goodness gracious. I feel like it has to be about him being able to sneak around and hear things that he's not supposed to. Either way, that's going to be
it was
wild.
a really interesting decision to have us see him find the cap and like consciously pick it up. The fact that Luke missed it too, it makes me happy that he missed it because we don't need him having any more powers.
No.
But yeah, I definitely was thinking this is a seed. They're planting it for whatever's coming next. And we've seen from the previews and from trailers and previews past that the fleece ends up on Kronos' sarcophagus, and also that Percy ends up somehow getting the fleece and running away with a really big wound in his like torso.
Yeah.
So somehow he's gonna have to get it, and it seems like it's gonna be by force, which means even with Annabeth saying, I think we can save Thalia, he has to take it by force. I'm planting this now because I feel like with what Becky said to us, so to give context to this, because I know Becky sometimes will go back and delete things. I tried to look for one she left for me a while ago, and I think she sometimes just like will clear things out if it was too much or something. But with this one, we were talking about Luke. We were talking crap about Luke, and she said it's going to be very clear what Luke is next episode.
Oh yeah, the post they made The post I
somehow,
made
yeah.
was basically, I was saying that a lot of people were saying that Annabeth being hurt brings out the best in Luke and the worst in Percy. And I was like, it's easy to look good when you are literally a murderer. And so because he didn't kill anybody
Yeah.
in this scene, people think that he did something good, when with Percy, they hold him up to these higher standards that you can't reach. And so she responded to that out of nowhere today and was like, and said like, after the next episode, you'll know exactly what Luke is. And I was like, and then I made a joke where I made another post being like, a comment on one of our posts has never been screenshot this many times, because I saw it every. It was just like, it's just so funny that this is on one of our posts. Like, oh my god, can everyone calm down? This is ridiculous. Like, her comment has just as
Some
many
of the
views as
repost
our
places
post.
were posting it.
Like, oh my god, can everyone just stop?
Yeah.
This is absurd. This is those moments when I like want to delete it because so many people are looking at us. Then I'm like, everyone calm down. But either way, that made me just the wound that the thing that I keep thinking about that Charlie Bushnell said in interviews, like in other interview clips, he was talking about how Luke this season tries to recruit Percy and Annabeth, and then when he realizes that that it's not going to work, the phrasing he used is, then the gloves come off. And I was like, that's terrifying. Now that we're actually at that part of the season, it's terrifying to think about what that means. Like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean the gloves are gonna, what do you mean? And so one of the other things he said in some of the other interviews, like during press time, that he said was, when he would be defending obviously his character, he would be saying that, oh, he doesn't really lie about things, even if he does all the time. Pretend like that's true. And then he was saying that the thing that he put it was like, people can start to like want to be listening to him, but then when he like fights, he always gets like too violent, basically. He said other words, but that's basically what he was saying. And then that always scares everybody away from wanting to join him when they see how vicious he's being. And one of the main things from the fight on the ship in the Sea of Monsters book is that's like Luke's no going back scene, because Camp sees him being brutal. He's literally laughing at Percy while he's standing above him and he can't walk or help himself. He's trying to feed Grover and Annabeth to monsters. He doesn't care that Thalia is going to die. And they all see that. And so that's like his last time of being able to stop what he's doing and get away from Kronos. And so I feel like they're making this be that moment. But it also makes me think that when he's fighting Percy, that part of me wondered, like, I thought that wound could be from Allison, and it still could be. But now I'm more thinking, like, maybe Luke stabs him.
Yeah.
Like, maybe Luke stabs him with something. And
well, I mean, we know he stabbed him in the book.
Yeah.
So I wonder if he's still going to get a wound from Backbiter at some point in this one. It would make sense, even if it happens in a different context, because, like, as a reminder to everybody, in the books, it's a one-on-one by the pool. Percy does the iris message trick, and he's trying to keep Luke busy, and he's baiting him to give a villain monologue where he gives up his whole plan by, like, saying very key things and having Luke's what's going on. Like, in fact, he was like, oh, so you poisoned the tree, it wasn't Chiron.
And that's how he gets Chiron back at camp, by having everyone at camp hear him say that, like when they're at dinner. And so there's no way that Tantalus could justify being there anymore. That fight, Luke like slashes his like knees, basically, like his legs, and he also slashes him on the chest. And so Luke hurt, like stabbing him or whatever in the chest is something that happens in the book. And so I feel like it might be Luke that does that to him. And it's like this scary thing of, you can understand why people might be like tempted, especially somebody like Annabeth would be tempted to believe like his pitch, for lack of a better word. But if Percy shows up and they're fighting, and especially Luke is better at him than that, much better at fighting. He's a lot older than him. He's been doing it a lot longer. That's part of the dynamic in the book too, is that she doesn't even let him get like a shield when Annabeth asks him to, because she knows that he can't actually fight Luke and win. And so if that sort of dynamic happens again and he hurts him like that, like that's you're not going to come back from that. Like people like especially Annabeth, she's not going to be okay with you trying to kill Percy again. She's not going to want to join
Yeah.
you and listen to anything no one's going to want to listen to anything you have to say when Percy is running around with some sort of a stab wound on him. And so beyond that, that's all we know is that Percy ends up with a stab wound. Clarisse ends up beating up 5 people at once. Her and Annabeth are fighting someone, which I'm assuming is Allison, at some point on the ship. That's literally all we know, and I'm continually terrified by the idea that when they were filming these later on episodes, that Sally was there. That I like keep remembering that whenever I think about these next 2 episodes, and I just get terrified of why she's there. Why is she there? Why is she there? Why is she there? Luke, what are you doing? Why is Sally there? She's not there in the book, so why is she there? Like,
Place to leave it at. I am way past William's bedtime, so I gotta get going. But
poor kid.
we'll see you guys next week for what is unfortunately going to be a very traumatic Luke episode from the sounds of it.
Get ready.